What's up, everybody? This is Ryan from Ryan's Game Room, and I wanted to today give you a list of my top 5 favorite games from 2012. Now, just as a disclaimer, this list is solely based on my opinion, just based on how much I enjoyed the games and how I would recommend them, and so it's going to be very subjective. And then also, I did not get to play every game that came out in 2012, of course. I don't have that kind of time or money, so this will only be based on the games that I played, obviously. So a few of the games that I didn't get to in 2012 were Max Payne 3, Hitman Absolution, Journey, which I definitely plan to play in the future, just didn't get a chance to. What else? Medal of Honor Warfighter, which I have no plans to play. But yeah, just to give you an idea, there were some big titles that passed me by in 2012. So this will only be based on the ones that I played and the ones that I liked. And so before I get into the list proper, I wanted to give out a couple of honorable mentions to games that maybe weren't good enough to be in my top 5, but were definitely good enough to mention, and maybe didn't get enough recognition, or not as much recognition as I feel they deserved. And so the first of those 2 games that I want to give honorable mentions to is Resident Evil 6. Yes, you heard me right. Resident Evil 6. I feel like this game got a lot of bad reviews, and a lot of people hated it. And some of the criticisms were well-deserved. I think some of the controls, especially a lot of the quick-time events, there were too many. But other than that, Resident Evil 6 is a great co-op game. And so, you know, every campaign is playable through co-op. It's definitely a lot more fun with a friend than by yourself. So if you are thinking of picking it up still, first of all, I wouldn't pay $60 for it. I would pay $30 or less. But second of all, make sure you have a friend to play with, because it's a lot more fun with friends. And the Mercenaries mode, which I feel is probably the strongest mode in the game, is for 2 players. Well, you can play it solo, but it's a lot more fun with 2 players. And so, you know, I really liked Resident Evil 6 a lot more than a lot more than I felt like at times, because it was at times very frustrating. But I felt it deserved an honorable mention, so there you go. Second honorable mention goes to Little Big Planet Karting, which, you know, you already saw probably my review of that earlier this year. But this is a game that, for various reasons, like, not a lot of people bought it, and I blame Sony for a lot of that, because I did not see it advertised at all whatsoever here in the United States, and it wasn't even available for pre-order on the PlayStation Store until, I think, 2 days before it released, which was ridiculous. On Sony's own store, it wasn't available for pre-order until then, and so I just, you know, that was really annoying. But it is a great kart racer, and if you like Little Big Planet, I think it has a lot to offer fans of the series of Little Big Planet. And for people who like kart racers, the battle mode is sublime in Little Big Planet Karting, and so I really recommend picking it up if you're curious. You can probably find it for pretty cheap at this point, or in the future. It'll be marked down very soon. So, Little Big Planet Karting, my second honorable mention. And so, without further ado, let's move on to the list proper.
What are you waiting for?
So at number 5, we have Dishonored. Now, Dishonored was a game that, when it was advertised, they were advertising it as kind of a first-person Assassin's Creed game, and so I kind of wasn't that interested in it at first, but I picked it up cheap for $25 on Black Friday, and I'm really glad that I did, because this game is actually fantastic. It requires a lot of stealth, a lot of cunning. There are a lot of decisions you have to make in terms of how you play the game that will definitely affect the outcome, and definitely, if not anything else, affect the ending. And the ending that you get, the more violently you play, the more disappointing the ending is, I think. And so you have to really be careful in how you play this game. And I want to see more stuff like this come out in the future, because it was definitely a new sort of experience that I was not expecting to have while playing this game, in that the way I played had weight. You know, if you just play casually through this, you're going to be surprised at the results you get. And for example, if you're playing through a game and killing people who are guarding a facility, you're killing guards, you're just killing innocent people who are doing their jobs. And this game addresses that better than any game I've ever played. And so it would be higher up on the list if not for some kind of funky stealth mechanics that you get detected sometimes when it really seems like you shouldn't, but that's a small complaint in what's otherwise a very good game with some fantastic voice acting by people like Brad Dourif. Susan Sarandon plays a very creepy character called Granny Rags. So if you're curious about this game at all, pick it up. It's definitely worth playing, and I hope you enjoy it. I certainly did.
Corvo's execution is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, but everything has to be set up today.
I can't wait to see his head.
All right, coming in at number 4, we have The Walking Dead, the game. This game won, the Spike VGA award for Game of the Year, and a lot of people were kind of confused as to why this game would win or even be nominated for Game of the Year because it was an episodic game. It didn't have a lot of gameplay. It was more of just an interactive story. And so a lot of people were confused as to why this game was nominated. What was so great about it? And let me tell you, it's an experience. It was a very, very good game. And people are right. There's not a lot of play involved. It's kind of a point and click most of the time. But the thing that makes this game stand out is the decisions you make, and even coming down to what you say to people really has weight and really makes a difference on how characters act towards you, how the story ends up turning out. You have a choice at a few points during the game to save one character or the other, and you usually can't save both. You have to make decisions, and those decisions really, really affect the story, and you have to think back and, what if I'd chosen this person instead, or what if I'd said this to this person instead? How would that change the story? And so it does have replay value based on that. And so it's just a really interesting game, and I would recommend that you try it before you kind of write it off as this really simplistic sort of game, which I thought it was at first before I tried it, and so it was really great. And let me tell you, there were 2 games that brought tears to my eyes this year, and the ending of The Walking Dead definitely did that for me, and for most other people I've spoken to about it. It's a gut-wrenching story at times, not just at the ending either. There are a lot of really emotional moments that you wouldn't expect in a video game. And so I hope to see more games like this in the future as well, with really well-done writing and voice acting and just a well-told story that really induces an emotional response from a player. So give Walking Dead a try. That's my number 4 for this year. And now we're moving on.
Come on, Lily. These are people. People trying to survive just like us.
To number 3. Number 3 this year is Assassin's Creed 3, fittingly enough. Assassin's Creed 3 was probably my most highly anticipated game for this year. I was looking the most forward to it, so my expectations were pretty much through the roof for it. And for the most part, it met those expectations. As with any Assassin's Creed game, this game takes you into a historical environment and really makes you feel like you're walking around in history. And that's just such an awesome feeling for me when I play the game that I couldn't help but enjoy this game. Just walking through, colonial Boston and New York felt amazing to me because I've grown up in the United States, and so this is kind of my history as an American. And so it was really a special experience for me to be able to experience the frontier. And, the frontier looked like some places that I'd been camping as a kid. And so it was a very magical experience for a lot of the gameplay. The only reason that this game did not get the number 1 spot on my list was it had a few things that disappointed me, not the least of which was the ending and the last couple chapters of or last couple sequences of the story really just kind of were a letdown for me. I'm not going to talk too much about them because I don't want to spoil anything for people. But I felt like the game was very front-heavy and that it was great at the beginning and then kind of didn't rise to my expectations, at least for the ending. And then, of course, the multiplayer, it was kind of standard fare in terms of Assassin's Creed multiplayer. It didn't really do anything for me one way or the other. But it's fun, and it's an interesting multiplayer to try. And they did add a co-op mode, which I think is very, very fun, if not a little bit limited, and you're probably not going to end up playing it that much. But Assassin's Creed 3, still definitely a very, very good game, even if it didn't completely meet my expectations. Definitely deserves to be on this list at the number 3 spot.
When my people go to war, A hatchet is buried into a post to signify its start. When the threat is ended, the hatchet is removed.
You could have used a tree.
All right, now moving on to number 2. My number 2 choice for this year is Borderlands II. And this is just... There's not much to say about this game besides the fact that it is fantastic. They basically took Borderlands 1, which was a very, very good game and a very good co-op game, and improved everything about it. Pretty much everything about Borderlands 2 is improved over the first, which was already a very solid game, and so they took what was a good game and made it great. Borderlands 2 has an improved story, improved characters. The voice acting is just top-notch. I was laughing at so many points during this game. It is really... The people at Gearbox, you could tell, had a great time creating this game. It had a lot of funny moments, a lot of great, memorable characters, and I haven't stopped playing Borderlands 2 yet. I still have a lot more story to experience, and there's constant DLC coming out for it. We've already had 2 DLCs released for it. The third one is coming out in mid-January. And they've even talked about maybe implementing a second season pass where they're going to have a second round of DLC after the 4 for the first season pass come out. And so there's a lot of great content coming for Borderlands 2. It's much more fun with friends than by yourself, but unlike the first game, which I thought was almost unplayable single player, you had to play with friends to be able to have fun, Borderlands 2 can stand alone as a single player game as well. It's obviously better if you have people with you. It's at its best when you have 2 or 3 friends with you to experience the game with. It's just second to none for co-op. So that's Borderlands 2. My number 2 choice, my second favorite game of this year.
Nobody likes you and you're a crappy dancer?
Well, to each his own. You are looking fabulous.
Shut the hell up, Claptrap!
Fair enough.
And coming in at number 1 is Mass Effect 3. Yes, you heard me right, Mass Effect 3. Now this game, again, was maligned by a lot of people. It had a lot of criticism about the ending, mainly. And I will admit, I was disappointed by the ending at first, too. Very disappointed, even. And when they finally came out with the Extended Cut DLC, that did improve the experience for me. I kind of wish that I wouldn't have played the game until the Extended Cut ending came out, because that did improve the ending a lot. It didn't change it, but it definitely made it so that it wasn't as much of a letdown. Still... You know, we would have liked to see Commander Shepard's story end in a different way, more of a positive note for the player. But overall, if we can look past the ending for a second, overall, this was just a fantastic game. The storytelling, as usual in Mass Effect games, was just top-notch. This was the second game of the year that really brought a tear to my eye at a couple different moments. There are some really touching scenes, and for a sci-fi game with these, weird-looking aliens, you wouldn't expect such an emotional response to be elicited, but it really hit home at a few points. And then the other reason that I chose this game as number 1, and there was a very small difference between number 1 and number 2 for me. They're almost interchangeable, but the reason that Mass Effect 3 edged out Borderlands 2 as my number 1 favorite game for this year is that the multiplayer, well, it's more co-op than anything, but the multiplayer mode in Mass Effect 3 is ridiculously fun and rewarding, and I have not stopped playing it since I got the game. It is just that much fun. I've really enjoyed the co-op multiplayer. It's a lot deeper than you would expect. Countless characters. There's over 30 characters that you can unlock and play in this co-op mode, and just an exponential amount of weapons and weapon mods and powers and abilities that you can upgrade, and I couldn't even begin to enumerate the many different customization options that there are for the multiplayer, but needless to say, it gives hours of fun, and they've been supporting the heck out of it. They've released 4 free DLCs at this point, I believe, for the multiplayer, and I've even heard rumors that there's another one coming in 2013. So, even now, you could pick up Mass Effect 3 and play the multiplayer, and have a lot of fun with it. Of course, after you've experienced the story, which, you know, despite the ending, is still top-notch. It's the best story I think I've seen this year. Even, well, maybe not better than the Walking Dead story, but as an overall game, it is my top choice. My favorite game for this year was Mass Effect 3. And so that is my list. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I'm Ryan, and I will talk to you later.
I'm on it.
Thank you, Commander.